So what are the consequences of electing con artists? If you get conned, you have con artists as your elected representatives. Well, maybe it's good to have a con artist in office. Maybe it's good to have someone who's slick in office. Yeah, except those people normally are just salesmen. They don't need to lie. Those people have careers in things other than crime and fooling people. No, when you get con artists in office, you get people who are only good at talking. In other words, they're good at talking to a specific group of people usually, and nothing else. Now, I realize glass houses, but I'll have you know, I'm a half-decent sandwich maker as well. No, Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of them. And the other day, somebody had the idea, crazy thought, to actually ask her about a policy. And she couldn't answer it. Now, I'll tell you what, if this policy doesn't sound familiar to you, that's fine. Because as far as I know, none of you guys asked to be running things. And if you did get in charge, the thing that would happen is an assistant would bring you things you're supposed to know about, topics that are going to be talked about during the day, and you would open up those little pamphlets, those little binders they bring. You'd take about 45 minutes and you'd read through them, and it'd be boring as hell, but important, so you'd do it. And you would know the sort of things you'd be voting on. Now, at a local level, those things you're going to know most of anyway, because you live there. At a national level, you're expected to do a little more reading. You're expected to familiarize yourself with the matters of the day a little bit more. And if you never do any work at all, eventually, and inevitably, you're going to look foolish, sort of like Marjorie Taylor Greene does in this clip brought to us by the Majority Report. Here it is. So close. There we are.
Apropos of what Heather was saying at the end, in terms of like that piece that Hayes wrote a while back, where the Republicans are not interested in policy, and that's been the case for years and years, frankly. There is no, you can't really speak to even like austerity and deficit reduction, which used to be their sort of like their head fake towards policy. Their one policy answer for everything is cut taxes. But imagine being the biggest fundraiser in Republican politics. Imagine being considered the shadow Speaker of the House and not knowing what Glass-Steagall was. Imagine, I mean, honestly, we had the biggest financial crisis of probably anybody alive's lifetime. Pretty close. I mean, you could be 100, I guess, now, or more or less 90, and have dealt with the Great Depression. But the 2008 financial crisis was massive. There are some people who disagree about this, but I don't think the majority disagree. But those people who disagree know the premise as to whether the repeal of Glass-Steagall in the 90s, which was the New Deal era legislation, which separated commercial from investment banks because of exactly what we saw in 2008 happen. And to not know what that is almost incomprehensible for anybody who's paid even the slightest bit of attention to politics. Certainly not someone who is considered the shadow Speaker of the House. I give you Marjorie Taylor Greene, ladies.
Yes. Great intro. Just want to clarify, Glass-Steagall was a protection put in place that got repealed. Its repeal is dangerous for our system of banking. in other words. I believe. But again, I want to stress, if you don't go Glass-Steagall, oh, well, I can't believe, doesn't know about Glass-Steagall. Yeah, again, this is for politicians to know. But another way to put this is, if you were a doctor and didn't know what a suture is. That's what he's talking about. Does somebody whose job is to design buildings need to know what a suture is? No. But a doctor sure as hell does. That is the context here.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Will you lead the charge in reapplying the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933? I was born in 1974, so I'm not familiar with that. But I can have my staff look into it. Anna's back there. Anna's going to look into it. Thank you, Anna. Anna flew down from Washington today, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Whoops. She's not familiar with, like, the most important piece of legislation that, like, was instrumental. Its repeal was instrumental to the collapse of 2008.
I mean, even if you disagree that it's a repeal, and there are some people who do, I happen to think that they're absolutely wrong, but you know what the Glass-Steagall is. I mean, it is a major piece of legislation.
Mm-hmm.
What other things does she not know about?
I can answer that rhetorical question. Everything. MAGA politicians are not interested in legislating. They're not interested in fixing anything. They're not interested even in the consequences of their actions so long as they are isolated from them. This is who is getting elected. And the clips like that are what we gotta share. Now, that was a short clip that they played. Probably could have pulled it for the stream, but I think, and there's a reason I prop up the Majority Report so much, I think it is very important that we get a bridge between knowing nothing about politics to knowing how politics works, really works. And programs like that, like the Majority Report, are great for it. I try to do a bit of that here as well. But obviously, the show's called What You Can Do. This is meant mostly for y'all that are watching right now. During the week, we try to show you, okay, now that you formed a political opinion, now that you watch this stuff with some regularity, how can you act upon it? But folks need to know the nuts and bolts of this. And somebody like Sam Cedar, Emma Vigeland, Brandon Sutton, Matt Leck, those folks are for politics what Neil deGrasse Tyson is for science. Say what you I don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson in politics, but for science he's great. Carl Sagan, same thing. They're communicators and they're good at it. And they just hit the nail on the head with what is wrong with MAGA politicians. If you're looking for evidence that these people don't give a shit about the things they're talking about, there it is. In a 4-minute clip. Let's let him keep kicking that dead horse. Because it was a shitty horse and it deserves it.
That took place before 1974. I guess you'd get stuff like, here, maybe we may even need some, oh, shoot, where is that music? Darn it.
I mean, the fact that you're asking this of
exactly.
her is incredibly smug and elitist. I got to be honest with you. The fact that you're asking for this kind of basic knowledge, it smells of East Coast bias.
I mean, you're talking about like
gatekeeping,
Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, the American with Disabilities Act.
When was the Constitution?
Constitution was even.
That was before she was born.
At least 60 years
before
ago.
1933, I'm pretty sure.
But this is really stunning. It really is stunning Like to not know, and you could tell that she also just thinks it's completely irrelevant. Like it's cute. Oh, are we going to reinstate? Is that the thing where you, I don't know, need light bulbs? She has no idea. I thought that's fascinating. I really.
Well, especially because their like new brand of Republican politics, people have spoken about them as like a building off of the Tea Party, right? Like this is the second level of what the Tea Party was, and the Tea Party was ostensibly all about fiscal responsibility, and it just goes to show that this whole group, they never gave a shit about that ever.
No, they didn't.
I mean, come on. Very little to add. Be salty about this. It's actually productive in this case to be salty about this. Man, I'll tell you what. I mean, I understand not knowing about these things. I'll even go a little bit farther and tell you I respect the fact that she didn't be like, well, you know, we're seriously considering it, but I'll tell you, this is, you know, it's been in place for such a long time. It's such an old law that we really need to give it some consideration. So I'll get back to you, but you know, just tread water and then move along. I'm glad she didn't do that. I'm glad she admitted to the ignorance. But the problem is having the ignorance on that particular matter really, really demonstrates that she is not familiar with the main cause of most of Americans' woes. It shows what she cares about, and it's not regulations on the banking industry. It's not making sure that we don't have another major economic meltdown. What is she interested in? Harassing trans people. Saying that Joe Biden is a socialist, even though she couldn't give you a definition of socialist. Even though she doesn't actually think he's a socialist, because she doesn't know what a socialist is. It shows you she's not a serious person. I do respect, credit where it's due, I do respect, at least in that moment, that she admitted she didn't know about it. That is maybe the one nice thing I'll say about her. And I also think that her constituents should take into consideration that they have put into power somebody who does not know about the nuts and bolts of perhaps the most relevant piece of legislation to the U.S. right now regarding regulating these big banks which cause all of our problems. And they should put somebody else there. God help me, I would take another Mitch McConnell over her. And that hurts me to say.